Some discoveries unfold like a quiet whisper across the cosmos. Others, like the arrival of 3E Atlas, crash into the halls of science like a deafening alarm. For centuries, we believed our solar system was a relatively quiet corner of the galaxy. A peaceful haven drifting in a sea of predictable orbits and lifeless rocks. But the arrival of Oumuamua in 2017 shattered that illusion. Now, years later, the James Webb Space Telescope has identified something even more chilling. An object far larger, far faster, and far more calculated. It's called 3 Atlas. And according to leaked internal analysis from Webb's early scans, it's not only on a path that defies randomness, it exhibits behaviors that no natural body should. It mimics comets, yet moves like a probe. It reflects light like ice, but emits radiation patterns too structured to be accidental. In short, 3 Atlas is beginning to look like a surveillance tool, an artificial visitor cloaked in the skin of a comet. And what's worse, it's headed straight for the heart of our solar system with a level of precision that has left scientists speechless. But is this truly the second interstellar visitor we've encountered? Or is it something much darker? Let's unravel the evidence and face a question no one wanted to ask again. What if this isn't just a comet? What if this is the next phase of contact? When astronomers at the Vera C. Rubin Observatory first detected the faint, fast-moving blur of 3E Atlas against the backdrop of the stars, they assumed it was another long-period comet, an icy drifter, harmless, spiraling in from the distant Oort cloud. But within hours, that assumption fell apart. The object's trajectory was unlike anything they'd catalogued before. Instead of obeying the chaotic curves expected from gravity-bound rocks, this body followed a narrow, deliberate path that cut straight through the inner solar system. And its velocity over 130,000 miles per hour, well above escape velocity, indicating that it had come from beyond the sun's gravitational influence. This immediately placed it into an elite category. Only the third known interstellar object ever detected. But the real alarm bells rang when its orbit simulations revealed something chilling. 3 Atlas would pass by several major planets at distances that allowed for potential data capture. Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and then swing past the Sun, using its energy to slingshot deeper into the system. Each turn, each alignment seemed designed, not incidental, not chaotic, like a ship on tour. Scientists ran the math again and again. And the odds of this being a natural trajectory, less than 0.01%. But even more disturbing, its closest approach to Earth would happen while our planet is shielded by the Sun, rendering it effectively invisible from all Earth-based observatories, as if it planned to avoid being seen. After Oumuamua's unexplained acceleration and bizarre properties, NASA was determined to be ready for the next interstellar visitor. That's why as soon as 3I Atlas entered the solar system, the James Webb Space Telescope was quietly tasked with direct observation. It targeted the object using infrared spectrometry, hoping to identify its composition. What Webb found stunned the scientific team. The spectral signature of 3E Atlas initially resembled that of carbon-rich comets. Dark, reflective, icy surfaces. But beneath those readings were anomalies that could not be ignored. First, there were rhythmic pulses of radiation, faint, repeating, structured. Second, it emitted thermal patterns inconsistent with rotation or solar heating, almost as if heat was being generated and distributed in a deliberate way. And third, there were unexplained micro-reflections that suggested smooth geometric surfaces beneath the dusty shell. It wasn't proof of engineering, but it certainly wasn't proof of randomness either. James Webb's data was sent to a select team of analysts under NASA's Office of Planetary Defense. And for the first time since Oumuamua, internal memos began to use words like intentional, artificial, and most terrifyingly surveillance. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it wasn't behaving like a comet. And if its approach was by design, the only question left was who sent it and why now. To understand why 3I Atlas has NASA on edge, we must return to 2017. Oumuamua, the first confirmed interstellar object, entered our system without warning. It tumbled, accelerated without outgassing, reflected light oddly, and vanished just as quickly. Renowned Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb proposed that Oumuamua might have been a fragment of alien technology, a light sail perhaps, or a probe designed to mimic natural objects. His theory was ridiculed by many. But now with 3i Atlas, some of those critics have gone silent. Because this new visitor is not only 7 times larger than Oumuamua, it's also smarter in its disguise. Passed close to Earth, allowing brief observation. Atlas, on the other hand, hides behind the sun, evades Earth-based detection, and only reveals glimpses through space telescopes. It rotates at a rate that reduces thermal detection. Its flight path avoids gravitational instability zones. It even slows slightly when approaching high radiation areas, something no known comet or asteroid has ever done. In every way, it's an evolutionary leap over Oumuamua. And now some theorists believe Oumuamua was just the reconnaissance phase, a preliminary scout. 3i Atlas is the main event. Behind closed doors, there's a theory that no official agency will confirm, but several insiders have begun to whisper. They call it the Watcher hypothesis. It suggests that 3i Atlas is not a comet, nor even a probe in the traditional sense, but a kind of interstellar sentinel, a long-term observational device launched by an unknown intelligence, one that has been monitoring solar systems for millennia. Its apparent targeting of Earth, its solar shielding maneuvers, and its flawless trajectory through the planetary system are not the result of natural forces, but of advanced pre-programming. Think of it like a black box, or worse, a surveillance drone equipped to record, analyze, and transmit information back to an origin point light years away. And perhaps it doesn't just watch. Perhaps it listens to our radio emissions, to our satellite traffic, to our response. What if Atlas is not just here to observe, but to measure how aware we are of it? Like a cosmic intelligence test, and Earth has just realized it's being watched, or worse, judged. Just as scientists were beginning to piece together the strangeness of 3i Atlas, something occurred that froze ongoing analysis and elevated the situation to a near-crisis level within key astrophysics institutions. The Deep Space Network, those massive antennas scattered across the globe that communicate with distant probes, detected a brief, barely perceptible signal originating from the direction of Atlas. It was narrowband, unmodulated, and pulsed at a frequency that bore eerie similarity to early attempts at Earth-based radar. What stunned analysts was the regularity of the pulses. It wasn't a continuous emission, nor was it random. It had spacing, precision, structure. Within hours, the message was escalated to multiple space agencies under classified protocols. Several observatories were quietly directed to reorient their instruments toward Atlas without making public announcements. One internal NASA memo stated, "The object may be actively scanning the planetary system. Signal is not of terrestrial origin. Compare with Oumuamua Incident Protocol." Although officials dismissed the signal as natural interference when questioned, leaked documents suggest that the signal repeated 3 times and then abruptly ceased, like a transmission test, a ping, or a handshake. While most telescopes rely on visible light, James Webb's real superpower lies in its ability to see in infrared, thermal radiation invisible to the human eye. This capability became critical as 3i Atlas began moving through a colder region of space just outside Mars' orbit. Infrared scans revealed something that shouldn't exist. Consistent angular shadows. Unlike typical comets, which emit irregular heat signatures due to their spinning, jagged nature, Atlas displayed persistent linear structures. It was as if the object had panels or fins, flat geometric surfaces that absorbed and remitted heat in a way no natural formation ever could. Even more bizarre was the discovery of what looked like a thermal corridor, a line of slightly warmer particles trailing behind the object, evenly spaced as if some propulsion or energy system was leaving a heat trail. These discoveries were never announced publicly. Instead, agencies began issuing vague warnings about unexpected comet activity and anomalous interstellar characteristics. But the truth had already begun leaking through independent astronomers. Atlas, to those who could read the data, looked built. With weeks of consistent trajectory tracking, researchers became confident that 3i Atlas would pass through a very specific corridor between Earth and the Sun, likely allowing it to remain mostly undetected by terrestrial telescopes. But then, without warning, it shifted. Not just a gravitational nudge or random drift, an actual course correction. The object began adjusting its path ever so slightly, but unmistakably, toward a new vector. And that vector was Earth. While not a collision course, the new trajectory would now bring it significantly closer to our planet than any interstellar object in recorded history. The margin of proximity is narrow enough to allow Earth-based radar detection and possibly even atmospheric influence. This redirection, scientists say, required a delta V change in velocity that cannot be explained by outgassing or gravity alone. Something or someone nudged Atlas. And if it's maneuvering, then it's not drifting, it's navigating. Sources inside major space agencies, including NASA, ESA, and the Japanese JAXA program, have leaked information about a joint emergency symposium held via encrypted satellite link. The topic 3I Atlas, specifically how to prepare for public reaction should the object display irrefutable signs of artificial construction or worse, intentional surveillance. According to those leaks, representatives debated the psychological impact of confirming an intelligent interstellar visitor. The conversation allegedly included projections of social destabilization, questions about military response, and even discussions around whether to reveal or conceal the findings altogether. Some argued for transparency, saying the public deserves to know. Others feared mass panic, the rise of conspiracy theories, and the loss of institutional trust. What's most disturbing is that this meeting took place before Atlas even reached its closest approach. Meaning they know or suspect much more than they've shared. And if a coordinated global meeting of top space agencies has been convened in secret, what exactly are they bracing for? When Oumuamua passed through our solar system in 2017, it left behind a storm of questions, unanswered signals, and wild speculation. Its odd acceleration, its cigar-like shape, its complete silence in terms of natural activity, all were anomalies. But 3 Atlas has not only recreated those mysteries, it has magnified them. New analysis shows that Atlas follows a mirrored trajectory to that of Oumuamua, almost as if retracing the same cosmic corridor, but in reverse. This symmetry has caused some scientists to reclassify both objects under a single new category: interstellar constructs with intentional navigation. What's even more disturbing is that when comparing infrared telemetry and light curves from Oumuamua with current data from Atlas, several overlapping patterns emerge, suggesting they might be part of the same origin, or worse, components of a single larger system that's still out there waiting. While Oumuamua left us guessing, 3E Atlas seems to be answering, and the answer is far from reassuring. Days after Webb captured its last clear set of images, something strange happened. A section of its deep field observational grid went offline. Not mechanically, but data in that area simply stopped coming in. NASA claimed a sensor calibration glitch, but engineers off the record have described it as a blackout anomaly. They were still receiving data from adjacent sectors, but anything pointed near Atlas was suddenly unreadable. What made this particularly alarming was that just before the data blackout, James Webb detected something else. A reflective flash only a few milliseconds long, followed by a high-density spike in infrared. To experienced analysts, this looked like an energy burst, possibly artificial. Then silence, as if the object had either cloaked itself or had interfered directly with Webb's detection systems. This phenomenon raised a terrifying question among internal teams. If this object can manipulate signals or distort our instruments, what else can it do? There is now a growing consensus within the astrophysical community that 3 Atlas will enter its closest approach to Earth within a matter of weeks. Unlike Oumuamua, which was already moving away by the time we discovered it, Atlas is coming toward us and it's decelerating. This has led to internal memos suggesting we may be facing the first close interstellar encounter in human history on purpose. Amateur astronomers have already begun documenting strange behaviors, light flickering that doesn't match rotational spin, inconsistencies in trajectory speed, and most disturbing of all, a growing halo of particles that appear to be orbiting Atlas, like a debris field or shield. Some believe this is natural fragmentation. Others think it's a controlled release of matter, as if something inside is preparing to emerge. Either way, the clock is ticking. And with every hour that passes, Atlas draws nearer to our world. In closed forums and scientific circles, a new hypothesis has begun to spread. Quietly, carefully, but with increasing urgency. What if 3E Atlas is not an explorer, not a relic, not even a message? What if it's a sentinel, a seed, a probe, a mechanism designed to awaken or activate once a certain condition is met, like proximity to intelligent life or detection by specific wavelengths? This theory gained traction when Atlas began reacting not just to gravitational forces, but to our observations. When our strongest infrared telescope looked closely, it changed. When radar pings increased, so did its pulse response. Some researchers have started to refer to it unofficially as the mirror. Because it doesn't just drift, it responds. It reflects. And now, as it approaches Earth more deliberately than anything we've seen before, humanity must decide. Do we observe? Do we reach out? Or do we prepare? As James Webb's sensors continued to analyze the object's surface, researchers began to notice something that shattered the assumption that 3 Atlas was merely passive. The light it reflects is not consistent. There's a modulation, a pattern, a fluctuation that when run through spectral analysis and Fourier transforms resembles a waveform code, not random, not chaotic, but ordered, structured, a kind of photonic Morse code embedded within the surface reflection. And it's not broadcasting outwards. It's responding directly to the frequencies we've been emitting. NASA has remained quiet on this, but leaked data shared by an anonymous spectrographer shows matching patterns that line up with some of humanity's earliest deep space transmissions, like echoes being mirrored back to us, slightly altered, like it's trying to show us that it heard us, or worse, that it understood. Astrophysicists at the South Pole Neutrino Observatory made an eerie discovery while reconstructing the orbital path of 3 Atlas using ancient ice core isotope data. Tiny deviations in cosmic particle influx dating back thousands of years matched the path that Atlas is now traveling. Meaning it may have been here before, or another object with similar characteristics traveled this exact trajectory centuries ago unnoticed by ancient civilizations. There are even whispers among comparative mythologists drawing eerie connections between Atlas's projected approach and certain recurring celestial omens in Mayan, Babylonian, and Vedic records. Could it be that humanity has seen this object or its kind before, recorded it as gods or stars, or perhaps as harbingers? Suddenly, the idea of it being new collapses. Maybe it's returning. While the public narrative remains tame, classified memos reveal a very different internal atmosphere. NASA has quietly activated something called the Shadow Protocol, a contingency measure that hasn't been used since the Cold War's peak. It involves restricted telescope access, encrypted communication between observatories, and the preparation of long-range radio silence if specific thresholds are crossed. The most disturbing part, these protocols are not just about what to do if 3 Atlas approaches Earth, but what to do if it answers, if it sends a clear signal, if it decelerates beyond a specific point, if it deploys anything. That means they are not preparing for exploration. They are preparing for an encounter they never expected, and one they fear we may not be ready for. Just when the story seemed like it couldn't escalate further, James Webb detected something even more shocking. A second object, smaller, dimmer, and trailing far behind 3 Atlas. It's moving along the same trajectory, but with subtle course corrections that suggest intentional coordination. Scientists are calling it Echo 9, though no official statement has been made. This new object mirrors Atlas's deceleration and occasionally disappears from infrared completely, only to reappear in another sector, like it's hopping across dimensions of light. Some now believe that Atlas is not alone, and perhaps never was. That what we're seeing isn't a single anomaly, but the vanguard of a network, a cosmic formation sent across space, not just to observe, but to execute a mission. And that means Earth is no longer a passive bystander in the universe. As the object advances, a strange field of distortion seems to follow in its wake. Space agencies across the globe, ESA, CNSA, and even private observatories have begun to report anomalies in signal time delays, gravitational lensing that shouldn't occur at these positions, and aberrant behavior in nearby comets and asteroids. One particularly disturbing report details a small asteroid that altered its orbit after passing near 3I Atlas, not due to gravitational pull, but to what physicists are now calling a localized spacetime ripple. This goes beyond gravity. It implies manipulation of the very structure of space itself. James Webb recorded slight oscillations in background cosmic microwave data while observing Atlas, something previously thought to be impossible unless under extreme cosmic conditions, like those near black holes. But Atlas is no black hole. It's controlled, meaning it may be using technologies we don't even have names for yet. You'd think that a signal from something as unusual as 3I Atlas would flood the SETI databases. But since the Webb revelations, something strange has happened. SETI has gone silent. Public updates ceased. The social media accounts have paused. And when questioned during a recent panel, one of their lead directors simply replied, "No comment on 3I Atlas at this time." What does that mean? Inside sources claim SAEI's main signal processing units have been redirected to encrypted projects with federal oversight. Even more bizarre, a private radio array in Australia leaked that they picked up pulsar-like echoes bouncing back from 3 Atlas. But when they attempted to re-observe the phenomenon, the echo had vanished. Not faded, vanished. As if the object had heard the inquiry and shut down its reply. Scientists tracking Atlas's trajectory were prepared for the typical gravitational curve. But what they got instead was something terrifying, an intentional drift. The object is no longer following the expected path. It's correcting, adjusting, almost steering. But more than that, recent orbital models reveal a Fibonacci pattern in its deceleration rate. A pattern found in nature, music, even DNA. Why would an object from interstellar space follow such an eerily familiar rhythm? Astrophysicists are scrambling to decode whether this is coincidence, mimicry, or communication. Because if it's the latter, we're no longer dealing with an object. We're dealing with a mind, a structure that not only navigates, but composes, like a dancer moving through cosmic silence to a beat only it can hear. With each new discovery, one thing becomes clearer. The implications of 3I Atlas extend far beyond astronomy. Philosophers, theologians, and cultural analysts have joined the conversation. Governments are forming secret panels to assess not just scientific threats, but psychological fallout. If this object is confirmed to be of intelligent origin, or worse, an artificial intelligence that predates us by eons,